Please be seated. The court is back in session. The floor is once again given to the lead co-lawyers for civil party to put further question to this civil party. You may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Tunsuka, this morning, when we adjourned, you were saying that you thought when you left Phnom Penh that you'd be able to come back. You at least stated that we believed in it to a certain extent. Does that mean that you somehow trusted the Khmer Rouge at that time?
Response. Yes, I thought that the war was over so that we would live in happiness. And that I would return as soon as possible to Phnom Penh. Allow me to repeat. A few days after we were evacuated, we were kind of hesitated. We were wondering whether after the war was over and the peace came to the country, that we would be returned, or after they cleaned the enemy, then we would be allowed to return. Of course, I trusted them at the time.
Merci.
Thank you. You left on foot, by car. How did you live with your grandchildren, your husband, and other family members?
No, we did not have a car. We actually walked with motorbikes. My family had some motorbikes, but we did not ride the motorbikes. We walked them, and some of us walked along the road together toward the Takeo.
Combien de temps a duré ce premier voyage?
What was the duration of that first trip before you arrived in the village where you stayed for a few weeks?
Initially, when we started, we walked slowly. We crossed the river, then we were at the Takmau, and then we were on the mist direction. Then we reached Preto. We stayed there for 1 or 2 nights, and then we tried to find our way back. So we stopped at a few locations until we reached National Road number 2 at Aung San Pagoda. We stopped at that pagoda and tried to find food. By the time we reached Knol Dach village, it took us about 11 days. 11 days and nights, including the times that we stopped over at various locations. And we were trying to hear further news and to look out for our relatives and neighbors. So we did not really want to go further, as I was looking for my relatives and my mother-in-law. So we did not actually walk that quickly, and we also spent time looking for food. And in total, it took us more than 10 days.
Est-ce que pendant ce voyage,
During that 11-day trip, did the Khmer Rouge give you food, water, or any health care?
No, they did not. Not even a single thing was given by the Khmer Rouge. One night I saw them driving a vehicle past us, but they did not give us anything.
Vous êtes arrivé dans un...
You arrived at the first village in Bati district. Can you give us the name of that first village?
The village was called Thnol Dach village. We stopped there. It was located in Krang Lieu sub-district, Bati district, Ta Keo province.
À cet endroit, vous viviez...
Did you live with the villagers who customarily lived in that village? Did you live with them in that first village?
Initially, I lived with the cousins of my husband. They had quite a big house in that Thnol Dach village, so we stayed there with them, and we did not know how Onka would organize us. We were quite happy to meet with the cousin and another family, that is the family of my father-in-law who got his leg injured. They went to another village in Songkrian village, Kong Pisay district, Kampong Speu province. So they separated from us while we was at that village. But for them, they knew where they headed to. But for me, I did not know, so I stopped and stayed at the Thnol Dach village, and we tried to find other relatives of ours in that village.
Est-ce que les Khmer...
Did the Khmer Rouge give the villagers any particular name, and did they give those who came from the town any particular name?
They refer to people by titles or relationship in the family, younger brother, younger sisters. It was pretty close back then.
Je crois qu'on ne s'est pas très bien compris.
I am not sure you quite understood my question. My question is whether you know whether the Khmer Rouge called the villagers by any particular name, and whether they called the group of people from Phnom Penh by any particular name. I am referring to the groups and not to individuals.
No, we were not referred to by a name, but for us, we were referred to as the 17th April people or new people, and that we were known, and those existing villagers were known as the base people.
Merci. Est-ce qu'il...
Thank you. Were you treated differently? That is to say, were you, the new people, treated any differently from the base people in each of the villages in which you resided?
While I was living there, at that time our relatives could give us some duck eggs and sugar. At that time, those people still had their personal property and belonging, and the property was not yet put into communal use. And we could ask for something from them. And later on, we was advised to get the rice ration from Angkar. And later on, when we were separated from the base people, then we were given rice. Let me repeat, when we initially settled there, the base people could give us some rice and some food.
Merci.
Thank you. You subsequently went to another village, and this morning you stated that you went to a special home for intellectuals near a village. Please give us the name of that village close to which you stayed.
The village where I stayed last before I went to Battambang province was known as a Tropang Ong village. But we did not live in that Tropang Ong village. We lived in a field about 50 meters from that village. And we needed to find sugar palm trees and bamboos to make our house and platform. There was just a plain roof and a field for us to settle in. And the intellectuals were gathered to live in that location.
Est-ce qu'on vous a donné
Did they give you any explanations why you were asked to go to that place, to that open field? Did they tell you why you had to go there?
No, they did not. But while we were at North Dutch village, our names were registered. We were asked what our occupation was and where we came from. And later on, we were separated into groups. The educated were sent to that village.
Vous nous avez dit que
You stated that you had to work. Did you work close to that place, or you had to go and work elsewhere, in some far-off place?
While I was in that village, I worked, but I did not work that far. The village was about 2 kilometers. So I worked within the village by working with fertilizer, for instance. I was assigned to work to carry out various tasks, including trying to find the contained kite trees, while the children were staying in the shade. And at that time, while I was working, I also tried to find food for my children to eat, because we were not given any extra fruit. So I tried to find banana, for example, for my children to eat.
dans ces deux premiers
At the first two places to which you went, at least the second time, were any meetings held? That is, did the people from Phnom Penh hold any meetings?
During the first stage, I attended 2 meetings. All the people from Phnom Penh were gathered for a meeting at Komarichi village. It was a far village, and we started to walk at 5 p.m. and it took us about 1.5 hours to 2 hours to reach that village. And the meetings were about the policies. And second meeting was held at the North Dutch village. It was a big meeting because at that time it coincided with a celebration.
ដង
On vous parlait des politiques.
They talk to you about policy. What policy were they talking about?
នៅពេល
At that time, the meeting was about to congratulate the victory, and that they were pleased to receive the people from Phnom Penh, and they talked about the defeat of the imperialist and the colonial group, and that the revolution was strong, even if they did not have many things to eat, but they were still strong.
សំទោសបន្ថែម
Allow me to add a bit further. And after the conclusion of the meeting, then there was a dancing session, and all the artists dressed in black uniform. The dancing style was a kind of a Chinese style. But on that day, I could not recall every part of the event. I was very concerned about my children, especially the young one. And at that time, there was a female soldier asking me about my name and whether I knew the person by that name who was a teacher. So I was so scared by hearing the question from her, and I did not pay much attention to what was going on the platform during the performance.
Pourquoi est-ce que vous aviez peur?
Why were you afraid? Since during the meeting you were told that the Khmer Rouge were happy to receive people from the towns.
Initially, they said they were pleased, and later on they talked about the defeat of the enemy, and they talked that they will cleanse the infiltrated enemy. And as for us, we were the Phnom Penh residents, and when they talk about trying to find the enemies, then we were concerned. And at the same time, when I was questioned by a Khmer Rouge female soldier, I was terrified. Then I did not pay much attention to what was going on the platform. And I tried to find a way not to make any mistake when I answered the questions.
J'aimerais parler un peu.
I would like us to talk about the second important trip. You stated that it was just before the monsoon rains and that it was sometime in July, that you didn't quite remember the date. What was the reason for that second movement? What reason was given to you for that?
ក្នុងពេល
Are you referring to the second evacuation? Because I was relocated a few times within that village while I left Phnom Penh. So if you meant about the second evacuation when I made my trip to Battambang, is that what you meant?
Oui, c'est exactement cela.
Yes, indeed, madam. What you refer to as the second evacuation, and rightly so. Were any reasons given to you for that second evacuation?
គេប្រជុំ
They held a meeting in one afternoon, and we were advised that we had to be relocated to another village where there would be plenty of rice. And that's the village where we were in was far, and it was difficult for them to transport the rice to us. That's the reason we were given during the meeting. So we trusted them once again. And then we prepared our belonging in anticipation for going to the place where there was plenty of rice. As we were told, they had difficulty in transporting the rice to us. And that was the second evacuation. During the initial evacuation, my relatives tried to convince us not to go, because they did not want us to go, and they wanted us to hide ourselves in the forest. So during that initial movement, the vehicles left, and then they came to call us from the forest to go to Prasad Pagoda during a meeting, and we were questioned why we did not follow the instruction from Angkar. Each of us was questioned, and then I was told to respond appropriately. And then I said that Angkar was only one, and wherever I went, it means I still stay with the Angkar, even at my current location. So I just repeated the same phrase, then I was let go. And later on, we were asked to return to the old village, that is to Trapang Ong village. And we did. And then there were quite a number of us who actually fled and avoided the initial evacuation. And if I can recall correctly, there were about 20 to 30 families returning, but this is just my estimation. Only the unit chief would know the exact numbers of the families returning from the forest. And after that, that is about 1 month after that, then we were called again for the evacuation or the relocation. So that was actually a second part of that movement. And at that time, the relatives staying in that in the village, they are not convince us to hide ourselves in the forest. So then, because we didn't want to put them in a trouble, we had to leave. And also we were hoping that we would have a better rice and food in the new location. And even if for that second movement, there were still those people who evaded. And later on, after 1979, I met some of them, and I was told that some of us didn't want to go while I went, and some of them had been killed. I met a person by the name of Tuj in Phnom Penh, and that person told me that he survived, but the rest of the family members were killed while they evaded from being sent while my family was sent. That person lived next door to me while we were living in Phnom Penh, and I told him back that for the first evacuation I did not go, but then I went during the second evacuation.
I want to be certain that I have understood this. You were told that you had to leave because where you were going near Battambang there would be more rice. And then there was a first departure, but you yourself did not leave because the people in the village hid you and said you had to stay. And then you were taken to a pagoda and then forced to leave. Some people did hide, and later you were told that people had been killed, but you yourself left. Now, have I got this right?
Response. It is not fully correct. The message is that at the beginning, when the truck was coming to pick us up, I was helped by some villagers. They tried to hide me, and indeed they snatched my luggage and asked me to find a hiding place and asked me not to get on the first leg of the track. So I missed that first track. But at 11 or 12 p.m., another leg of track came and asked us why we did not really go during the first trip. And we were told by villagers to use the same language, telling them that we did not want to go because it was the same Angkar, so on and so forth. And then we were loaded on that track to the new location. After a while, we had been re-evacuated to another place where we promised some more food. And we had no choice but getting on the track. And I am sorry if I didn't make myself clear. Only in 1979, after the Khmer Rouge, I met a man who used to live next to my house, and that he survived because he had to run away from the same village where we finally left. Indeed, he was among other people who did not want to leave the village, and he was hiding. But then other people who were also hiding were all executed except him, who managed to escape to Sector 55 and survives. The rest was killed because Angkar found out that they were hiding.
C'est moi, madame, qui m'excuse de ne pas être très...
Not at all. I apologize if I have not been clear. So there, you were leaving in the trucks. You were pressed into the trucks with the others. How long did this part of the journey in the trucks last?
Response: it took us the whole day. Indeed, it did not start from early in the morning. We were gathered all together at about 8 to 9 a.m. and then we were loaded onto the truck. Later on, we were transported to this location where we arrived at late in the afternoon. And indeed, it took us a very long time because the road was not in good condition, and they did not stop for us to break. The Khmer Rouge may go to the jungle to relieve themselves, but they wouldn't allow us to get off the track. We were allowed to get off the track only when we reached Posat.
Vous êtes arrivé.
You reached Purasat by night and then you took a train. Was this a goods wagon or was it a passenger compartment?
Response: we were packed in the empty cargo wagon.
Merci.
Thank you. Where did the train go and where did it stop?
Response: the train went to Kok Trom station, and at this Kok Trom station, we were stopped.
Was there a village nearby, and if so, what was it like, and what were you ordered to do?
Response. I saw no roof of any houses in the nearby location near the train station, so there was no villagers who waited to receive us or who were at the train station. We were helpless. The station was surrounded by bushes and water, and we were afraid to move about elsewhere. We were staying in one place when the other people, for example, those who were transporting us, could be seen walking nearby. A few while later, these people left us, and later on we heard that the train was moving to another station, leaving us behind. We had no information about where we should go, and we remained in that location. And I could not recall how long it took us for the entire trip. We were overwhelmed with many events, and we were very afraid. And indeed, a moment before we got off the train, we were dragged from the train to leave the train before it went to the other direction and leaving us behind when it was almost late in the afternoon before just night fell.
Were you told why you were being left in this place where there were no villagers?
Response. No, we were not told anything. We were just asked to get off the train and stay there. And since we did not know the location, because there was no village nearby, we could not go anywhere but remaining at the station. And we were frustrated because I was there with my elderly mother and sick family members, so we stayed there.
So you weren't given any explanations for this, but in your view, why were you left at that particular place?
I think we were destined to be dropped at that location, and I think we had nothing but to listen to their instruction. While people in the wagon we were in were not told anything about the reason behind our being dropped there, but perhaps other people in other wagons could have been told anything about this, which I don't know.
Est-ce que vous pouvez...
Can you quickly tell us how you managed to get enough to drink, to eat, and to wash on a daily basis? Indeed, how were you housed?
Response. We did not have any big concern regarding water because we could have a small kettle where we could cook some water fetched from the rice paddy or ponds nearby. And a few nights later, there were some rains, and we had a lot of problem being in the rain because we didn't have proper shelter. We got wet and soaked with rainwater, and life was not easy at all. We were frustrated and stranded. In the morning, people would go and find some leaves to make a walls of the thatched house. And we also had problem looking for fish because we didn't have things to cook or to prepare for the fish. So we were somewhat unprepared. And then a person came and asked us to go to a village called Sopi village to have our rice husked and milled, and we only came back in the rain, and the husked rice was all wet, and we had to put all this rice together in a kind of collective rice collection, and we would then cook some porridge, and we could make use of the leaves to make our home temporarily. And then we had to also cook some of the worms. The very normally people did not eat them, but we had to cook them. And we collected some other roots and put some salt so that we could eat them. And the worms had to be thrown away because they were not allowed to eat. I mean, allowed here by way of saying that these worms were not for eating. And at a later date, I met another sad uncle who appeared to be very sad in his facial expression. He was so sad, and his face was more like a pale and like a sick person. He said he was looking for his relative. And he told us that indeed if we moved further, then we would reach a village. So listening to him, we could then gather all the family members to go and take refuge in that village. During that time, we have lost some of our relatives. And by way of knowing someone who could take us to another village, then we would follow him or her, hoping that we would find our lost, missing relatives. We finally reached Kok Trom location. It was not a village. It was a higher ground, and some people used to live there before, but it was not really a friendly place for people to live. It was only the place where people could bring their harvest, and that rice should be shred there. And we took refuge at that location. It was not good, but we had no choice. After a few months, we ran out of food, and we ran to the old village to be met by a black, strange man who told us that we could follow him to find some bitter goods, a kind of vegetable. And then we walked back to the east direction along the rail track, and I saw a lot of people die. I saw them die in a small hut. These bodies was a kind of gory image, because people could have died after long day without food. And I then had to move forward to look for some vegetable. I was walking further distance, but later on there was no vegetable to be found. Some people did give up because it was getting closer to the night already. But that person, the strange man, as I indicated, kept fetching or picking some leaves from the nearby the roadside so that he could eat. And finally we got to Koh Cha, greeted by a group of a family of 3 or 4 people. One of the elderly persons there offered me some food, and one person died on the same day, and the dead body had to be buried, and in the morning I could see that a lot of people died and buried in the nearby location. So I felt that a lot of people were dying each day, and I was terrified, and I think I have already answered your question. The President, Council, you may proceed, but could you advise the Chamber as to how you arrange the time allocated to you and the prosecution?
I need another 10 minutes to finish, and I believe that the prosecutor has told me he needs 20 to 30 minutes. Thank you, Mr. President.
The President, councils have already been reminded that you would be given half day to pose questions to the civil party. Indeed, some of the time was taken during this morning session, but we would not extend further time on this because we need to make sure that we can expedite the proceedings.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, I understand, Mr. President. We started at about 11:30 this morning and at about 2:20 this afternoon, so I will proceed expeditiously. Madam, what was the final village you ended up in?
Response. It's called Srai O village of Mong Rusai district of Badambong. At that time, I was on the run. We were on the run because we had been suffering greatly already because we believed that we were left there to die. A lot of people were dying because there was no medicine, people did not have anything to eat, and we were in the middle of nowhere. So I had to run all the way to final village of Srai O.
Merci, Madame. Donc,
Thank you very much, Madam. So you described the 2 phases of forced transfer that you underwent, and you described 5 places that you went through. This morning you told us that your youngest daughter, who then was aged 4, died of malnutrition and lack of health care subsequent to successive transfers. Now, can you tell us how your husband underwent these 2 forced transfers? Could you briefly tell us how he underwent the ordeal?
Response. He was no different from us. He also got some kind of infection and sick. And when we ran to Srai On, a lot of family members of mine died, including my parents-in-law. We were thinking that when we reached a new village, life would be better. But we learned that when we reached this new village, everything was in the form of collective. So things were put in the collective. We were not allowed to go freely, and if we would do that, we would be arrested. My daughter, who had been ill for many days or months already, could not make it. She died there. And before she died, I was trying to bring her to Mong Rusai district. Indeed, we met a doctor before 1976 when my daughter was properly cured, but later on she had the same problem, and without proper care she died. 2 of my younger siblings also died in 1976. By 1977, I had another big problem. My husband was very exhausted, that his eyesight became problematic, that he could not see anything. And in the late afternoon, people could see him walking into the jungle or to the bush. Actually, he did not see where he would be walking to. And it was a kind of very difficult situation. And by 1978, he couldn't take it no more. He committed suicide.
est-ce que vous avez...
Were you not able to save him?
When I left my work And a few days later, I was sent to work at Relium, which was far from where he was. He was by himself, and I had to move on with the work, and I was very concerned about his health, since I noticed twice that he wanted to commit suicide. And one time, I saw him coming out of the forest, and I asked him what happened. He said, wait till we return to the house. And at our house, he said that he was afraid that the militia would come and arrest him, as he saw the young militia walking around the house, and he saw them arrest some people. Since he was tired and fatigued, and he was very skinny, and I noticed that he wanted to commit a suicide. He had a fruit with him known as Pekku in Khmer. He said that if he take that fruit, he would die quickly, and I was afraid, so I threw it away. But from that day, I was still very concerned that he would one day commit suicide. He was a kind of a deep thinker, and he did not express himself outwardly. And one day when I had to work at Relu, he disappeared, and I was looking for him. So I went to look for him at the kitchen hall, but he was not there. I went to the bathroom, he was not there. And then I went to the house, and there I saw him. He already had hung himself, but the bamboo broke, and his feet almost touched the zinc. I tried to resuscitate him, but it was to no avail. I tried to revive him. It took me about 1 hour. I kept crying until I ran out of tears. Later on, I just sat down and thought to myself, it was a hopeless situation. I actually jumped on his chest, and then there was a burp, and I tried to revive him. Then there was another burp, but he was still motionless. Then before I was convinced that he died, I washed his body. But then when the water touched him, his pulse reactivated, and he kind of survived from that day.
Je vous remercie, Madame. On va s'arrêter.
Thank you, Madam. I think this is very difficult for you, so I won't dwell on the matter any further. I want to thank you for all of the details and information that you gave us, and for having relived these memories for the Chamber and for the civil parties. Thank you, Madam.
President, thank you. I'd like to inquire from the prosecution, how much time do you anticipate?
Mr. President, probably about 20 minutes.
President, thank you. The time is appropriate for a short break. We will take a 20-minute break and return at 10 to 3. Court officer, could you assist the civil party during the break? And have her return to the courtroom at 10 to 3.
សូមចេញក្រោកឈរ